Is Brandon seeing this stuff too? He has to be seeing this, right? Oh, Okay, readers, tonight we get into the Brandon Sanderson topic update, plus I'm going to go over the top books I cannot wait to read in 2025. We're talking Goosebumps, we're talking fantasy, everything in between, guys. Please leave a like, comment. Here we go with tonight's topics. Welcome to the Fantasy Madhouse. So, the man himself has finally responded to the backlash. The man himself being Brandon Sanderson, aka Brando Sando, aka BS, aka the guy that I have a black and white photograph in my house for some reason. His latest book in his mega series, The Stormlight Archive, released in December of last year, and ever since then, the talk of the town has kind of revolved around how underwhelming it is, which is crazy. This guy is basically just beneath George R.R. Martin when it comes to fantasy books these days, and a lot of what he does is truly incredible. I could give the guy props for days, but the backlash to this book, and actually to his writing in general, has been kind of loud as of late. I even made a video on this particular topic recently you guys can check out called Is the Brandon Sanderson Hype Dying? You know, this guy, Brandon, he's super active on social media and with his fan base, so I had to wonder, is Brandon seeing this stuff too? He has to be seeing this, right? Well, it turns out he is. Over on Reddit, a post was made by a user that was simply titled, "There's so much hate." By the way, guys, if you don't know what Reddit is, it's basically like a giant chat room where people discuss everything from Pokemon to stocks, for God's sakes. In this post, the user said that they were pretty disheartened by the flack Brandon Sanderson and even fans of him were receiving in the fantasy Reddit space as of lately, and really in YouTube and other areas as well. Then the post basically goes on to say that Reddit fantasy users were harping on Brandon for his writing being aimed at young adults. They even went so far as to say that his Mistborn series is like Harry Potter but for nerds. I mean, who cares about that? But this post gained a good bit of traction with many people, including, yeah, the man himself. This guy, who responded with the following. And by the way, guys, you'll have to forgive me for editing this down. Brandon wrote a lot, which is kind of unlike him. Anyway, Brandon said that he himself is a longtime participant in the Reddit fantasy subreddit. He's noticed a sudden drastic increase in negative comments about him. He felt that the subreddit for fantasy was once his home, had now become aggressively negative towards him. He remembered a time when the community tried to stop hate trends, like those against Twilight and Aragon. Should have maybe tried a little bit harder with that one, Brandon. But guys, I want to point out a couple interesting tidbits with you. Brandon says, "I get that I became overexposed, and I get that not everyone is going to like my work." My thought is, guys, I appreciate that Brandon kind of gets it. I honestly do. You know, he understands that he's huge now, and for better or worse, everything he does is under a huge microscope. So that means he needs to step his game up if things don't swing his way, if you want my opinion. Brandon also says that one sign of being mature is no longer being so uptight about worrying if people see you as immature. Read what you like, it's okay. Now, I'm not going to disagree with Brandon on here just for the sake of disagreeing with him and looking whatever certain way. I agree with what he's saying. It's a good point. But again, I think Brandon should take his own advice and not worry about reading these kinds of Reddit posts or obsessing over what the discourse on the fantasy Reddit is. Honestly, I think listening to his fans have kind of been a double-edged sword for him. On one hand, some of his fans give brutally honest feedback on things, and I think he takes it on the chin, which is pretty admirable. On the other hand, though, I think some of his hardcore fans pump his tires way too much and have led to Brandon being a little bit too self-assured. Okay, can I just take a pause and take out something that just grinds my gears about books lately? This is just my opinion, but everyone always telling him and other authors, "Hey, keep making the books longer and longer, it's great." No, please stop. I don't want authors putting in filler just to like satisfy some 1,000-page count that everyone wants to have in their book so they can look cool because they're reading a book the size of a dictionary. Can we stop with that? Brandon goes on to mention here also that he feels like he was a part of the hipster groups back then in the old internet days that got to anoint what was and wasn't proper fantasy to read. Now, I found this to be pretty interesting because he's kind of admitting that he was a part of the same group that would have disliked his work these days, which is, it's crazy to think about, isn't it? Brandon finishes with this. He says, when we love something, there is a temptation to build our personalities around being the one with the good taste. There is nothing wrong with reading critically or preferring one type of story over another, and leaving sincere negative feedback on review sites is legitimately helpful both to readers and even to authors. So overall, guys, it seems like Brandon is aware of the negativity coming his way after the Wind in Truth drop. But the bad news is I kind of doubt it's having any real effect on what he does next or how he edits his work or doesn't edit his work. I don't know. It probably doesn't have to have an effect, honestly, even if I happen to disagree. Leave your thoughts about this down in the comments section. The conversation ever since that last video has been really interesting. A lot of different people with a lot of different perspectives. I welcome all perspectives here with regards to book reading or fantasy or whatever have you. I think that it's all great to talk about and discuss and, you know, really delve into what we love here with this stuff. In fact, you guys recommended to me for the month of February 2025 to read Mistborn. That's right. We just cannot stop talking about Brandon Sanderson. We can't get away from the guys. And honestly, I'm looking forward to it. I hope it's really good. But I want to go through with you guys tonight a couple of the book series I want to start, I want to finish. I want to hear your thoughts too. Give your recommendations for what I should read next, what your thoughts on these series are down in the comment section below. But I do want to start with the first Goosebump book of the year that I want to read. And that's a Goosebump book that on the surface probably doesn't look like much, probably doesn't even look like a Goosebump book, honestly. And that is How I Learned to Fly. Now, I don't know, I just have a soft spot in my heart for Goosebump books that don't instantly just feel like they're the creepy, crawly type of Goosebump book where they're not revolving around Halloween. I kind of like the ones that have sort of a different kind of feel, like a different story. You know, I've come to appreciate books like Legend of the Lost Legend and, you know, even like I said, Attack of the Mutant, not really a typical Goosebump Halloween scary book, but, you know, I am really interested to read this one because I think it's going to be a different take on Goosebumps, and it's just a book that when I was a kid I would probably pass up in 2 seconds to read. You know, I'd probably pulled this out of the shelf at the library back in 1999 and thought, I ain't reading that stuff. Old Goosebump bookmarks, like cardboard, very light. See, it's kind of splitting there at the top. But these bookmarks that came in these books were kind of rare, and still to this day are very hard to find, these books with the bookmarks still in them. But there you go. Really anxious to try out How I Learned to Fly. I will have a review for that for you guys coming out pretty soon. Also in the world of Goosebumps, I want to jump into some Slappy books. Slappy's Nightmare. This is one of the rare Goosebump books, if you guys aren't aware. I read this way back when I was a kid, have not read it since, and I'm very interested to see if it still holds up or what I think about it. I remember it being a different kind of Slappy story, where he's usually a villain. In this book, he actually has to do a couple good deeds, and I kind of recall him being pretty endearing in this book. So I'm looking forward to seeing if it still is endearing. If it ain't, then we'll throw it in a pile. Time to talk a little bit more about what fantasy series I want to finish up, because there are so many books coming out this year that finish off so many epic sci-fi and fantasy series. First off, guys, just because it's right here in front of me, this is Lightbringer by Pierce Brown, and his series is the Red Rising saga. I am in the middle of book 3. I love the series. It kind of got put on the back burner because of everything else going on and all the other different books I've been trying to read through this year. But it's my goal to get through to this book, read this book, and be ready for the series end that's hopefully coming out this year, the final book called Red God, which is just an insanely badass title, and I want to see what happens. I love Darrow. I love all these characters. The brutality of the story does not let up, and I've read a lot of books lately that have been kind of slow, so getting back into Red Rising will be a good change of pace for me personally. But reading goal this year is to get through Red Rising, get ready for Red God. Next up, guys, a series that I want to start this year, but this is the Farseer trilogy. This is book 1. I started to read this recently. I got like maybe 20 or so pages in, 20, 30 pages in, and I thought this is really good, but I got a lot of other things going on, so I did not finish at the time. I want to get back to this series and try it out because I've heard so many great things. I actually have the trilogy here on the bookshelf back there, and I really want to try it. I hear great things about Robin Hobb. I love great writing, and she's one that's got, you know, a reputation up there with Patrick Rothfuss, with Christopher Rocchio, and all those kind of greats that we have in the modern day. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what she brings to the table. One thing I need in my reading life is variety. I need to have it change up every now and again, because if I read the same thing, if I read too much Sanderson, if I read too much of this or too much of that, it just gets super stale, and I hate that feeling. And I can't wait to start Assassin's Apprentice, see if I like it. Another author that I really want to get into this year, guys, is Terry Pratchett. Now, this book I had heard through the grapevine. It probably isn't actually his best book, but I heard that Guards was one of his more famous, beloved books. I have this, and I actually have Mort. I think I have it right here with me. Yeah, Mort. Both books, you know, pretty small books, nothing too crazy, maybe like 200, 250, 300 pages a piece. I hear that his humor is very on par with, you know, Monty Python, things like that. And I think it's super cool that fantasy, in that genre, you have so many different sprinklings of personalities, and there's so many different bends to fantasy, right? I mean, there's so many different takes on things that it's cool whenever you get to kind of flavor it up with someone like Terry Pratchett. A lot of these, I believe, are standalones. You guys can let me know in the comments section if there's any that aren't standalones. Maybe there's some in his series that are actually, you know, they go together. Or maybe they all do in some sense. Irregardless, looking very much forward to reading Discworld by Terry Pratchett. So that's on the TBR for this year. Also, guys, I mentioned Christopher Rocchio. I read Empire of Silence last year. It was a good book. It did not quite live up to the hype for me personally, though. I think that you have the typical book 1 problems. You want to see the world kind of expand, and that doesn't quite happen in this book, but there's a lot of cool things in this series. I wish that book 1 kind of lived up to the hype that you've all probably heard about this book. For me personally, but I have high hopes for the series as I hear it gets better and better as you go on. But the last book in this series, guys, is Shadows Upon Time, and Christopher Rocchio, I believe, is writing through it right now, hopefully for a 2025, like end of the year release. So you have all year. Last year, guys, I was not there for the release of the latest Brandon Sanderson book. You know, I'm actually going to be on Oathbringer here shortly whenever I get some time. But I missed the window to get there for Wind and Truth, and I don't want to miss that window for this series or for the Red Rising saga, as I like them both very, very much. And I want to be there for the hype. I want to give my review and have you guys watch it, and let's all discuss it together. So hopefully that happens this year. I need that encouragement, though. Next, guys, I never thought that manga would be something I would enjoy a lot, but I'm going to have a video coming out about this little slice of heaven series, guys. One Piece. Obviously, it's a huge Japanese manga series that I believe still is continuing to this day. The Netflix series is out. You guys may know quite a lot about this series, a lot more than I would. I'm very, very new to it. But what I read, the first volume here, I have a lot of thoughts about, a lot of positive thoughts. I just was shocked by how much I enjoyed this, and by the personality and the humor and just the absolute feeling of joy that I get whenever I read this. You know, just for whatever reason, for something that I'm not even nostalgic for, this makes me feel like a kid again. And yeah, I have so many thoughts about this. I can't wait to share it with you guys here on its own dedicated video here pretty soon on the channel, probably this week sometime. So look out for that. And my stack here is getting kind of rickety, guys, but as I mentioned, I am going through on my Kindle Mistborn right now. I hope to have a review for it at the end of the month here. You guys, again, you have all month to read it with me, and then in March we'll decide on the next book that we'll read for the month of March. The conversation is never ending, right? So let's continue it. Who knows? Maybe something magical will happen this year. Episode 1 for 2025. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Come back again very, very soon.